while I was there, I had been there, you know, maybe a couple of months, and I had to go to a school in Alabama. And from there, they wanted someone to go, as soon as I graduated the school, they were looking for someone to go to Saudi Arabia. At the time, I thought to myself, this would be the perfect opportunity for me to get away from work, to get away from people, and to try to find out what it was that I was missing in my life. And so I had met at the base that I met a guy who worked down the hall from me. His name is Khalil Alim, and I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for bringing him to me because he was the one who actually introduced me to Islam. He was a Muslim, and we became friends, and we would go play basketball together. I wasn't interested in Islam at all. And there would be 3 Muslim brothers and 3 other brothers who were not Muslims playing against each other, playing basketball. And we would make jokes with each other, and I'd always tell them, you know, I'm going to eat this great big pork chop sandwich and go home, and, you know how good a pork chop sandwich tastes. And so I used to joke with him all the time about, you know, eating pork and maybe drinking a beer or something. And of course, they were Muslims, and they didn't do that sort of thing. And I you know, really didn't think anything about it. You know, we were still friends, but I would just tease him in that manner. So before I left to go to Saudi Arabia, I was interested in trying to become a good Christian, or what I considered a good Christian. And because there were so many stories out there, you know, this is what the Protestants say, this is what the Methodists say, this is what the Catholics say. I said to myself that I was going to read the Bible, I was going to sit down with a notebook and go through it and see what it is in the Bible that God said that a man had to do to be a servant of God. And so I took my Bible, and I had got a book from one of the brothers called, which was actually from Khalil Alim, and it was called Bringing the Black Man Back to God. And I took this book and I took this Bible to Saudi Arabia. And whenever I was outside of work, I would read the Bible and I would study this book. The book was actually by a guy who was a Baptist minister who had converted to Islam. But of course, I was just reading the book for the knowledge that it was talking about one God in the book, and looking up the references in the Bible. While I was there, I liked to go to bookstores, and I had always been interested in buying different books about the spirit and about the soul and different things. And so I went to the bookstore while I was in Saudi Arabia, and I purchased my first Quran. And I had thought that the Quran was like the Bible, where the Bible introduces the characters pretty much, gives you the setting, and then it pretty much goes through a history of mankind and through the people of God at that time and through the history of the Jews. And so, of course, when I opened the Quran, the first chapter is Al-Fatiha, and it's 7 verses long, and reading it, I didn't understand it at all. So I closed the Quran and kept on reading the Bible and studying these books until I left Saudi Arabia. When I left Saudi Arabia, I went back to New Mexico, and once again started playing basketball with the group of guys that I would play with. I began to go to their service, which is called Juma, on Fridays, and just sit and listen to what was going on. I didn't pray, I didn't do anything. I would just listen to what they were saying there. And one Friday, they were having Juma because they didn't have a place to have it. They were having Juma in one of the brothers' homes. And so that Friday, I hadn't even planned on accepting Islam or anything. But that Friday, something inside of me told me that, you know, it came to my mind and said, if I made a little prayer to myself, I said that if this thing Islam is not good for me, make it difficult for me to do this. And if it's right for me, make it easy. At the time, I didn't even know that this is actually a dua that you make in Islam, you know, for things when you want to know about something. And so at that day, at that Juma, I accepted Islam with very, very little knowledge about Islam. The group of brothers who were there, we bought books and stuff and studied, but we were kind of like between the Nation of Islam and true Islam. We would look at tapes by Louis Farrakhan and other Nation of Islam people, and then we would read something from Quran and look at another tape, and we kept saying, there is something different about these two things. One of them just doesn't smell right. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a brother to our community who had some Islamic knowledge. And through him we got more books, and learn certain things. And actually, it kind of divided the community, because a lot of the brothers who were there because of this quote unquote black nationalist movement, which is pretty much what the Nation of Islam is. And the other brothers were there because they were spiritually looking for the truth.